So this is the second of my cancer Q&A videos. Recently I asked for questions that I could answer in videos or topics, and 22 questions and topics were submitted, which is fantastic. So I'm just going to work my way through some of them. So first one, a topic from my friend Kirsten. She'd like to know about cultural attitudes to cancer, different countries' approaches. So I was diagnosed in the UK in 2016, but all my treatment has been in Japan. So in the UK I had tests basically. I had a couple of endoscopies, so a colonoscopy and gastroscopy, and a chest x-ray and a CT scan and a PET scan, and of course blood testing as well, and also an initial consultation with an oncologist. But all my treatment has been in Japan. So one big difference is that between Japan and the UK is that in the UK cancer treatment is far more defeatist. So there's basically an idea that if the cancer has spread, so if it's a later stage cancer, there's not a lot to do really. So there's a very kind of broken culture in the NHS about treatment. I think not just cancer, but all across every realm of medical care in the UK, people have just given up, and there are reasons for that, some of which are cultural, I think, and some of which are maybe economic or more to do with how the society is. In Japan, yeah, I think the Japanese health system is one of the best in the world, and it's very bureaucratic. It's very frustrating to be on the inside of it, particularly for me, because I often want to do things that are a bit unusual or do things in a strange order. But yeah, I think medical practitioners here just expect a much higher standard compared to the UK, not just in treatment outcomes, but in every aspect of healthcare. So it's a lot more pleasant to deal with than dealing in the UK, dealing with healthcare in the UK. Obviously, I know a lot of cancer patients around the world, and I know that in the US, cancer treatment tends to be more aggressive compared to Japan, which is good and bad. But I also found both in Japan, both in the UK and the US, cancer treatment is a lot more sloppy, particularly after treatment. So, I mean, in Japan, if you have cancer, you're going to be getting monthly blood tests and scans every few months. And yet I know loads and loads and loads and loads of cancer patients in the UK who are not having regular blood tests, maybe because they're not currently in treatment. I mean, in Japan it would be unthinkable. And again, in the UK, in the US rather, I've heard, lots of people will get to maybe stable disease or even NED, no evidence of disease, and then treatment will just abruptly stop. And also in the US, of course, there's no public health care in the way that we understand in other countries. So you have issues with insurance. There are, obviously in the US, there's a public health insurance, the kind of Medicare or whatever, but it's not what normal people would consider a health system. And that means that a doctor in the US may recommend something and the insurance company may disagree and have their own doctor who says, oh, this test is not proven to be useful, or this treatment is not useful and we're not going to pay for it. I think that a big cultural difference between medical care in Japan and the US is that in Japan, I think doctors are more careful with what they say. I mean, it's difficult to, without having first-hand experience of the US system, it's a bit difficult for me to talk about it. But often people in the cancer Facebook groups will say things their doctors have said, which are just ridiculous, like so subjective. Now, some of that will be patients misremembering or rephrasing things in a dumb way. But still, I think there is some truth in it that sort of US doctors say things that you would never say in Japan. But yeah, really interesting topic, Kirsten, and it's something I should interview people on, actually, because of course I know cancer patients all around the world. Another topic from Kirsten, fundraising. When I'm guessing you want to hide away how to deal with the financial side of cancer. So cancer is incredibly expensive, even if you're in a country where there's treatment that's 100% free at the point of use. It's still expensive. There are lots of costs associated with cancer. There's a lot of travel. If you're going around to different places looking for treatments, there's obviously treatment cost itself. So even in a country with universal healthcare, you may be paying for sort of extra tests or treatments that are not covered by your public healthcare system. I find fundraising very difficult. However, it's vitally important. It's why I'm alive. So when my terminal cancer was found 8 years ago, my sister started a crowdfunding campaign. I knew quite a lot about crowdfunding, but I had never heard it being used for medical use. Sort of my image of crowdfunding was, if you're going to make a film or a CD in those days, maybe you would use Indiegogo. If you're going to make a physical product, you do Kickstarter. But the idea of using it to raise money for medical fees or just medical costs, that was kind of new to me. And I'm very, very glad that my sister set up that fundraising campaign. I'm quite a shy person, as you can probably tell from my videos. I struggle to talk about many topics. And before the cancer 8 years ago, I never used my real name online. I had a Facebook account with another name. I didn't have any email addresses with my name in, for example. Except one of my first ever Yahoo email addresses that I'm still using 26 years later, whatever it is. So yeah, I do find it difficult. It's obviously tricky to ask people for money. I think that people are starting to understand that giving money to big cancer charities is the same as throwing away money. So I think people people realize that you can have a massive impact on somebody's life by donating to their crowdfunding. Yeah, I mean, it just makes a huge difference in it. And, it doesn't have to be for medical care. I've seen people who are raising money just for the expenses around having cancer or some chronic disease, or, looking after a child with mobility issues where, the crowdfunding money is just life-changing to better make the house safer for a child with mobility issues. It's just, yeah, it just changes everything to have that money. And interestingly, even in countries like the UK where there's universal healthcare, there's money for lots of things related to health, but you're still often engaging in a bureaucratic toxic system. You may have to, let's say you have to apply for a special bed, and it goes through a multidisciplinary team meeting, and there are all these issues, and it's unpleasant and slow. And with crowdfunding, people help you out and you can just get the bed. So fundraising is a very, very interesting topic. There's a couple more topics from Kirsten, which I'll save for the next video. Question from Jonathan: do you know of any non-standard treatment types aside from chemotherapy, such as liquid radiation? Yeah, I guess I know a lot of non-standard treatment types. So liquid radiation is a sort of in-body radiotherapy. So there's external radiotherapy where you have some kind of beam of gamma rays or particle beam, like a proton beam therapy or boron ion therapy, that kind of thing, or carbon ion therapy or neutron capture therapy. But there's also internal radiotherapy where radioactive material is placed in the body. I think often would be during a surgical procedure, or a slightly less invasive kind of using a catheter or something. So there are treatments where you block up blood vessels, and I think you can do that using radioactive beads. Yttrium-90, Y90 treatment, using the isotope of yttrium, which is radioactive. And then the liquid radiation is using liquid radioisotopes. I think, bizarrely, there might be a liquid form of radon, possibly. And there's radioactive isotopes of many elements, and some of those will be in liquid form or in a liquid state compound. So there's those. There's lots of novel treatments using chemotherapy. So there's things like HIPEC, which is heated intraperitoneal something chemotherapy, where you put hot chemotherapy into someone's abdominal cavity, sometimes for up to 24 hours. There's a similar one where you pump the person up with carbon dioxide and then spray the inside of the abdominal cavity. I think, is it called peripec or something? There's a similar one now for lungs where you bathe the lungs in chemotherapy. There are interesting approaches to chemo where you have chemotherapy that's activated in certain conditions, so that allows you to give a chemotherapy drug but then create the conditions in a certain part of the body where you want the chemotherapy to work. So a famous one of those is there's a prostate cancer chemotherapy which is only active in, I think it's the presence of UV light, So you can give the chemotherapy drug to the patient by a intravenous drip and then activate it in the area of the prostate using a fiber optic UV light source. So that's kind of cool. So yes, many treatments like that. So I got many questions from Angie. Do you find in general that researching treatments and the particulars of cancer or your condition helps you stay curious, or does that have to come from somewhere else? I don't really think it helps me stay curious. I'm just a very curious person anyway. I find researching the treatments very useful. I find it useful just from the pure practicality of I know more about treatments, I can ask more about them. I can sometimes tell oncologists about treatments they may not be aware of. But also it's very useful just to be doing something practical when I'm in a tricky situation. There's not a lot I can do, and then at least I can find out about some other treatments. Another question from Angie: do you have any go-to ways to refresh your mindset that have helped you get through the worst times before? Well, kind of I've already alluded to one thing, which is a study. Another big thing that I'm recognizing more and more is just asking people for help or for information. Just asking people is so sensible. I found like just going for a walk generally helps. You know, many problems can be solved by going for a walk or going to bed, and generally going for a walk is better. But going to bed also, can be very beneficial too. There's 3 more ones from Angie, but I'll just do one more. Are you able to eat at the moment? What sort of foods? So at the moment I'm not eating a lot. So I've got cancer pain for the first time in my 8 years of having cancer, which has been caused by or we think it's been caused by a tumor in my liver. So that's making it a bit hard to eat. That's also making it hard to sleep, which means my appetite is less. And also I'm taking opioids, which also kind of suppresses my appetite. But what sort of foods? My go-to food are eggs, really, because they're so nutritionally dense. And so 3 or 4 eggs a day generally. Eggs contain, I think, like 12 of the 13 sort of essential vitamins and minerals that we need, allegedly. When I've got poor appetite, I find things like mild curry to be very useful, very kind of very appetizing food. When I can't manage much, I can still eat some curry. Okay. A couple of questions from Neil. How are you and your family prepared for your potential passing emotionally? Not at all is the honest answer. I've tried like recording stuff for my kids, found that difficult. Tried writing stuff for my kids, found that very difficult. At the moment, I just try and spend time with my kids when I can and do meaningful things with them. So like reading to my daughter. I try and teach my son a lot about how to behave. That's not going well, but I'm still trying. So that, but kind of emotionally prepared for my death. I mean, for me, I've kind of resolved to fight till the very last moment. I'm going to really try and keep myself to that. So there's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be like meditative period where I'm thinking like, oh, the end is coming. I'm not going to do that. I'm just for the sake of, I'm going to fight until the last moment. Yeah. So I guess I'm prepared in that way, in that, yeah, I'm just going to fight till the end. But no, for my family, I mean, when someone dies, there's obviously a lot of emotional stuff, but there's a lot of practical stuff, and that does concern me. Yeah, so things like with my son, kind of giving him a list of my close friends and their contact details, so people who hopefully will help him out when I'm no longer here. Yeah. Another question from Neil. Do you remember having hair? I'm not sure what he means by that, but I think that like hair is kind of an interesting topic in cancer. So I'm just going to stick the fan on because it is already swelteringly hot here, although I'm recording in the morning. Tokyo is proper hot and humid at the moment, kind of high 30s during the day and high 20s, low 30s during the night. Hot. I think we associate cancer with hair loss. I should say that the vast majority of cancer treatments do not result in hair loss. You don't, as far as I know, lose your hair from surgery. Radiotherapy you can, but again, like I had radiotherapy to my liver and lungs and some lymph nodes, and yeah, maybe the hair on my chest stopped growing temporarily. I had a chemotherapy called irinotecan, very unpleasant one. That stops your hair growing, but then a few weeks after you stop that chemo, your hair grows again. I mean, yeah, to be very honest, the reason that hair loss is associated with cancer is because our image of cancer is a female patient on a drip with no hair, and that makes a good photo. That's not the reality of cancer for the vast majority of people. It does seem that more treatments for women's cancer tend to cause hair loss, but not all do. One issue is that typically when you lose your hair from chemo, when it grows back, it's different. So it's often quite wiry and curly. Yeah, I understand why it's a really big deal for people. I mean, for me, the big thing was the horrific skin rash, and when I had the horrific skin rash from a drug called cetuximab, and also from another drug called panitumumab. So I had like acid burn kind of style skin rash, orange crust, breaking blisters, horrific, and kind of down on my upper torso as well. It was just like looking in the mirror and not seeing myself. I suddenly understood, I think, what the big deal was about hair loss, or about women who have a breast removed, which surgeons really shouldn't be doing. Just, oh gosh, I'm not a fan of that. Yeah. Yeah. So, do I remember having hair? No. Well, not like. I mean, I get a 3mm crew cut every few weeks because my local hairdresser charges 500 yen, which is like a couple of pounds. And it's my one indulgence. But yeah, interesting question. Hair and cancer. Remember, a lot of that is to do with photos, not reality. Yep, so I'll do another video soon with the remaining questions from Kirsten and Angie. Please give me your questions. Find me on Facebook and write a question on one of my posts, or yeah, on any YouTube video of mine. Please post a question. They're useful, they're interesting, they help other people a lot, patients, carers, that kind of thing. So yeah, please give me more questions. Thanks a lot.